For our first ever garden suite project in Toronto, we had to go through the minor variance process to get it approved. And through this process, we had objections from the neighbors, we had objections from the neighborhood association, and we also had objections from the local councilor. Stick around as we explain how we navigated this process and still became successful, and how you can use the same strategy for your next project. Let's get into it. Thanks for watching. This is Andy from Suite Additions. We're an architectural design company helping homeowners and investors create more housing and generate wealth with the Max Suite strategy. Over the years, we've helped close to 500 clients legally convert their homes to multiple units, boosting cash flow and increasing house value. If you want more information, check us out at suiteadditions.com. We also have a training and VIP investor community. You can check that out in the description below. As always, it would really help us out if you can give us a like and subscribe to this channel so that we can get more information out. Okay, so do you want to get the highest and best use out of your project so that it's profitable or even feasible to do? Now, what's preventing this might be some silly local bylaws that is stopping you from moving forward. So today we're going to show you how you can get around this with a minor variance process with the city. So if you want to maximize the value of your property, you got to watch this video till the end. Okay, so let's get into the details. Generally speaking, we like to avoid minor variances for several reasons. Number one, it adds more time to the entire process. And of course, time is money. It's going to add actual hard costs, right? So you have to apply for the minor variance. There's going to be application fees. You may have to hire an architect, designer, or urban planner to help you navigate this process. And there's other fees associated with this. And the longer that you wait, the more holding costs that you're going to incur for your property. The other thing is that it's going to involve the neighbors, right? We always want to be able to do a project without necessarily neighbor input. But if you are going to go through a minor variance process, your neighbors will be notified and they have an opportunity to voice their opinion. Now, we want to avoid this, but in some cases, it might still make sense to utilize this process. What are some of those reasons? Well, first, you might need to, right? So let's say you don't have the parking requirements, or you need to have a reduction in a separation or a setback or the height of the building, and you have no choice. Okay, so that's the first reason. And in some cases, even if you don't require a minor variance, you might want to go through that process anyways, because it might make the project more financially feasible. You might want to be able to increase the size of the project, and it's going to make a lot more sense with the financing of the project. Now, you might have more time on your hand, right? So it may not be a big rush. Maybe you've owned this property for a number of years and you want to build this for your own use or for a long-term investment, and it's not going to make a difference if things get delayed by several months. And you're going to be able to significantly add value to that just by being able to add more to the project. And you simply want to make the best use of your property, right? If you're going to do that anyways, in a lot of cases, it might make sense to spend a little bit of time to make the best use of your property. Now, this might seem daunting, but we want to show you how to actually pass this process. If you know how to navigate this process, you'll be able to successfully complete many more projects and over time push for more and be more profitable over the long term. And of course, this is going to add to your bottom line over the long term. We're currently in an environment where there's a lot of tailwinds, meaning that the cities are encouraging more housing units. So the environment's a little bit different than when I started 8-10 years ago, where we didn't have all the policies in place. Okay, so we've been through this process many times for ourselves as well as on behalf of clients, so we can give you the information that you need if you want to go through this process to make your project more profitable and increase it to its highest and best use. So what we'll also do is use a recent example, that one we mentioned earlier, where we had the neighbors, the neighborhood association, and even the local councilor object to our project. We're going to talk about that as an example. We're going to explain how we were able to still be successful and how you can take our lessons for your project. Okay? For those of you who aren't familiar with the minor variance process, let's talk about what that is first, okay? So what is a minor variance? You're basically asking for special permission from the city because you're not able to meet one or more of the bylaws. Okay, so bylaws, some examples of bylaws may be a parking requirement, it may be a setback requirement, maybe it's the size of the unit or height of the structure that you're building. Essentially, you're asking for a special permission within the existing zoning bylaws. This is different from the building code. If you're not able to comply with something from the building code, you have to actually adjust your design, okay? So there's no minor variance process for the building code. This is only for the municipal bylaws, okay? So once you have decided that you want to apply for the minor variance because you want to have that special permission, you would set a hearing date at the city with the Committee of Adjustments. All right, and the Committee of Adjustments are a group of people at the city. A lot of them are volunteers. A lot of them are not technical. They are there to represent the community, to see that the project makes sense for their particular community and for their city. However, there is the city planning staff who are the experts, and they understand urban planning and they understand zoning. And a lot of times the Committee of Adjustments are relying on the advice of the city planning staff, okay? So what you want to do is you want to work closely with the city planning staff on your project to make sure that they're on your side so that there's a higher likelihood that the Committee of Adjustments are going to pass your minor variance, all right? Now, there have been some positive changes for small developers in the past couple of years as a result of Provincial Bill 23, okay? Now, the first thing is that if you do pass the minor variance at the Committee of Adjustments hearing, generally speaking, there can be no appeal, okay? Meaning that you just have to wait for the binding period, and then you're going to get approved, and then you can start working on your building permit. However, if you don't get approved at the minor variance, you can still appeal. Okay, so you can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal to appeal your case. Obviously, this is going to add way more time to the project, but again, you know, it may still be worth it, especially if your numbers are going to pan out a lot better based on your special request. And again, the environment is a lot more favorable for developers at this time. So there are 4 tests that are administered to determine whether your minor variance is going to pass. Okay, so you need to make sure that your application meets these 4 tests. The first thing is it desirable for the neighborhood? If you're doing multiple suites and you're doing a garden suite, this is what most planning staff in the various cities and towns across Ontario want to happen, okay? So it is desirable within the neighborhood. The second thing is, does it meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Again, the zoning bylaw are the outline of all the rules of what you can do within that city at the current time. So if the city says that you can add in multiple units and garden suites, what you're doing, as long as it's within those parameters, it does meet the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The third thing is, does it meet the general intent of the official plan, okay? The official plan is different from the zoning bylaw in that the official plan is a bigger picture view of what that municipality wants to see in the longer term. So those items are not necessarily in the zoning bylaw. So as long as you're generally within the intent of where the city plans to move forward in the coming years, as long as you're within that, that part is going to pass. And then the last thing is it actually minor in nature, right? So if you're asking for, let's say, a slight reduction in the parking space or a reduction in the setback or an increase in the height of the building slightly, that makes sense. But if you want to ask for a minor variance to build, you know, a 6-story structure, obviously that's not minor in nature. Now, of course, some of this is subjective, right? The example that I gave just there is an extreme example, but in some cases it is subjective. So understand that there's going to be some wiggle room there. Okay, so you have to meet those 4 tests. You know, having been through this process many times, I see the same common objections, and these are the ones that you should be prepared for as well. Okay, so what are some common objections from neighbors and neighborhood associations? The first one is parking concerns. People are very worried about too many vehicles, too much traffic. That's going to be the #1 thing, and a lot of committee members are still sensitive to these issues. Some are concerned about too many people in the area. Okay, some are concerned about property values and changing the character of the neighborhood. For the most part, I would say that because we're in a housing crisis, the planning staff and even Committee of Adjustments are not necessarily too sensitive to these issues, because ultimately we do need more housing and they do recognize that, right? But you yourself, you want to prepare your arguments so that you're sensitive to these arguments and that you're cordial in your explanation, and that you don't seem like you're being very antagonistic towards the people, and just be sensitive. And when the committee members see that, they will generally be on your side if they see that what you're trying to do is, you know, use these adjustments in the minor variance to try to improve the neighborhood. All right. At the end of the day, I mean, we just find our experience that many existing homeowners and neighbors just don't like that their neighborhoods are changed. A lot of times change is scary. They don't know what it's going to look like. But in many cases, once the project's completed, whether it's a small scale infill project or whether it's a small, garden suite, once everything's done, they're like, hey, actually this looks pretty nice, and it's something that they might be interested in doing themselves, right? But a lot of people are scared of change. Some general strategies, again, stay positive, don't be antagonistic. The other thing is have communication with your neighbors. I know that seems daunting to, knock on your neighbor's door and tell them that you're going to be doing this small development project, but in examples of our clients where they've done that, a lot of neighbors have actually showed support. And a lot of times people just want to be heard, and if they feel that you're going to be doing something that is going to be a positive to the neighborhood, they will be more willing to listen and also be supportive of the project, right? So it doesn't hurt. I mean, if they don't like what you're doing, you didn't lose anything. But there's an opportunity that they might support you. Because understand that the most vocal people are usually the people that are against the project, that they don't like to see it. So they're going to make time out of their schedule, whether it's, in a Zoom call or going into the actual meeting in person after work, they're going to voice their opinion. However, people who are more positive, they may not necessarily have the time to go through that process. And we don't hear those voices, right? So people who benefit from this additional housing, future tenants, it could be family members, they may not necessarily be voicing their opinion. So wherever possible, try to get positive support as well, whether it's local neighbors or whether it's people that are living in that municipality. You can certainly have them write an email or have them do a short video recording or even partake in the minor variance hearing if they're willing to do that. Okay, so positive support is very impactful. The other recommendation that we have is go visit some hearings before your hearing. Okay, so you may physically go there in some cases, or it may be on a Zoom call. Post-COVID, a lot of these minor variances have been done on Zoom, okay? So the benefit of watching and being a part of some of these hearings before your hearing is that you learn and understand these committee members and you know that what sort of things they're looking for. As a matter of fact, some cities even have these already recorded on YouTube, so you can go and check them out. This is a really good learning experience so that you understand some of the nuances for your municipality and some of the concerns for the committee members and the planning staff. Okay. The last thing that is important is that you want to connect with the city planning staff for your particular project, right? So once you submit your application, reach out to the city and find out who the lead planner is for your file, and reach out to them and let them know what you're trying to do and let them know that you want to work with them so that you come up with a solution that is favorable for them and that you're willing to be flexible. And that goes a long way, because if they see that you're willing to do that, it means that there's a higher likelihood that they're going to support your project. And then if the committee members rely on their information, there's a higher likelihood that your project is going to be successful. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you guys the example where I mentioned earlier that we had a huge amount of pushback. So this was for Justin's Garden Suite. We did a video earlier on Justin's Garden Suite. He didn't necessarily actually have to go through this minor variance, but he just wanted to increase the size slightly. And we really only had two simple minor variances, which is the setback for two sides of the house. Because we had submitted that, we had the adjacent neighbor complain or send in a letter. We had the neighborhood association send a letter, and we even had a letter from the local councilor. And the great thing was that we had all of this feedback several days prior to our hearing so that we had an opportunity to prepare our arguments in rebuttal to some of those arguments. The first neighbor that was adjacent, that was actually very easy because he simply made arguments that are just no longer valid in this day and age, which was he was concerned about the neighborhood getting ruined because of tenants or worried about his property values going down. The funny thing was he tore down his house to build a brand new huge monster custom home, and he didn't want us to build this small little 621 square foot garden suite. So that was a pretty easy argument to kind of dismantle, just to let him know that, hey, housing is very important. This is something that we're going to be spending a lot of effort on to make it into a really nice unit. So whoever's living here in the future, whether it's a family member or whether it's a paying tenant, is not going to be a concern for the neighborhood, and there's plenty of parking options available. So that wasn't really a concern for us. The neighborhood association, though, they had experience and they were a little bit more tactful. They didn't bring up the issues of property values or tenants ruining their neighborhood, because they know that would essentially get them not heard. So what they did was they actually tried to focus on the fact that this is a new policy and that there may be unintended consequences, and that the city should slow down and not approve this so that they can have more time. And I think their strategy was really to just hinder the project so that hopefully we would just not continue. But what we did there was we simply stated that this policy has been under review for a couple of years. It had the backing of the laneway suite policy. There's been plenty of studies, so there's no reason other than just looking at the minor variance itself to address any concerns, right? So that argument was also relatively easy, I think, because the policy was already put in place. They spent a lot of time putting this thing together. So there's really no reason for us to not move forward. And so we just brought up the fact that, is this minor variance of 1 meter on either side a concern? Because if that's not a concern, then this minor variance should get pushed through. So that was the neighborhood association. And then the local councilor really just repeated a lot of the arguments made by the association, which was they were concerned about unintended consequences. The local councilor does not have as much information. I mean, they're dealing with so many different issues, not just housing, right? So they're relying on information from others. And again, we had the same argument that this is something that's, we should push through, and really we should just focus on the minor variance at hand. Generally speaking, we recommend, trying to avoid minor variances if possible. But again, in some cases, it may be necessary, or it may make sense for you to, spend the extra time and money to really focus on getting that highest and best use for your property. And hopefully, some of the information here is able to give you some confidence if you are going through this process. And hopefully that is really going to increase the value of your property over time as well. All right. As always, guys, hopefully this was helpful. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. To learn more about the Max Suite strategy, download our free guides at suiteadditions.com and get started. And if you enjoyed this video, here's another great one for you.